Hello, this is Paul Dean. Welcome to Introduction to Outdoor Leadership Skills, known as IOLS. I've been asked to put together a presentation about finding signs of wildlife in nature as part of Boy Scouts requirements from pretty much second class to first class as part of rank advancement. A little bit about me is I'm a retired forester. I'm definitely not a hunter, but I have spent a lot of time in the woods and I've met with a lot of wildlife biologists and did a lot of prescriptions for landowners that are managing for timber and wildlife. So some of the things I'm going to share with you are associated with some practices that are done in forestry, and moreover a little bit about just more about wildlife in general, on how to find signs of wildlife, especially with working with scouts, and in such a way of trying not to make it too boring. And what's funny about when this recording is, I'm thinking to say, ding, go to the next slide. Only because years ago I can remember people where you had a picture book and you'd be playing a sound and it would give you a sound to let you know that it's time to turn the page. But anyway, I hope you get something out of this video. Ding! Okay, well, here we go. No more dings. So what we're going to do is try to help you. I'm going to help you as a Scoutmaster learn how to discuss and identify signs of wildlife, nesting, additional evidence, or anything that you can identify, especially when you're working with scouts. So you need to learn a little bit about this as much as I can share with you, but it is a real challenge, and you will find out how do you make this interesting to scouts when you're going out in the woods. So the key thing is I'll find ways to share with you how to make this fun. Second class requirement. So identify and show evidence of at least 10 kinds of wild animals such as birds, mammals, reptiles, fish, mollusks found in your local area or camping location. Scouts may show evidence of tracks and signs of wildlife with photographs. Now, personally, I prefer scouts going on a hike and going out and actually experiencing this, instead of eventually just sitting with you and then showing you a bunch of photographs. But you got to be flexible with it. But I'm primarily biased towards the first one, but I will cover that later about ways I think you can work with them with photographs. Your ultimate challenge definitely is going to be, how can you make nature and being out there fun and interesting? I'm going to try to make it interesting to you in the next few minutes, but you're going to be out there with the scouts. It's an outdoor program, so everything you should be doing, moreover, should be as much as you can outdoors. So you need to get out and you need to learn to respect and understand it. So what I'm going to cover next and share with you is about different animals and habitat, and this will help you when you're out looking for different animals, understanding the habitats that you are exploring. Habitat. Well, what the heck is it? Well, here's the technical term. It's an ecological area that is inhabited by a particular species or animal, plant, or other type of organism, and you're going to be in it. It's their happy place. It's where they can find food, shelter, protection, and a mate. Now, I'll cover that a little bit later just to kind of make it funny, but it's definitely where they can survive and thrive. And think about, if you don't have good food and a good place, you can't even begin to think about thriving. You're just trying to survive. Finding signs of wildlife. So how do you do this with scouts? First, I need to remind you that part of the youth protection is never one-on-one with another scout. Make sure you have at least 2 scouts with you when you venture out into the woods. Basically, it's great to have a small group. Have a chat with them before you go do this. Have one of them grab a field book and a pen. He can be the scribe. Some of them can take photos too when you come across, for a combination of things you can do when you're out. But it's good to do this as a group. You need to stress it in before you go that there are that they are in the house with the wildlife. You're in their habitat. You are invading them as you're walking through the woods. So you need to be quiet. That is definitely never easy. Many times, absolutely, they're going to scare everything away within miles. Probably the best time to do it is early in the morning. This is when hunters usually do a lot of these different things, to be out in it and to make use of, your different senses. But the key thing is have a good talk before you go do this, and assign someone to be a scribe so you can make it a group activity. As you begin to venture out with the scouts, take a few moments to talk to them about becoming a keen observer. It basically means being in touch and aware of everything around your surroundings and making use of your senses. Slow down and look closely at everything. Have the scouts, if they got them, you can bring binoculars, magnifying lens, any of these different tools that you can be using while you're out observing wildlife. Listening, teach them how to sit quietly, how not to move, which I know is tough. Smelling, you can discuss about how different times of the year there are different things that are blooming, the different flowers, the pollen, and all the activity that goes on during the different seasons of the year, especially in the spring. You can talk to them about touching and how different tree bark feels different, and then how different animals utilize different techniques of their senses. Snakes with their flicking of the tongue, the way they can sense heat and things around them. Cats, I'm always amazed at whiskers about how sensitive they are about navigating and through brush and how they use that. Fish with their scales, but it's important, take time to share that with them before you venture into the woods so they'll be prepared. Okay, let's talk about scat. Not my favorite subject, but you're going to come across it. Most common, you'll probably see some deer scat, so here's a couple pictures of it. You can talk to the scout about what deer eat and how they like to get out in open fields where there's a lot of, I call it a salad bowl for deer to get out there and eat, and you'll see evidence of it. And you don't want to get it confused with rabbits, but it's easy. But anything you can find, note it, discuss it. And then when you see there is a difference a little bit between deer scat and rabbit scat. I get them mixed up. But apparently with the rabbit scat, it's a little more pellet shaped. I think it looks a lot similar, but in this case, look at it to be more pellet and more dark, and then you'll come across a deer scat. But just note it and you can move on to your next, observation in the woods. Then we have fox poop or scat. And personally, it's real easy to get this confused with dogs or coyotes. But the big thing I like to share with scouts is it's a predator. If you see hair in it and bits of bones, it's pretty much a predator. And I think it's just important to explain that to the scout about the predator and prey relationship. And they're out there. So you'll come across this, and if it's got hair, it's a predator. Now the other thing is bear. I hope you don't come across a bear, but it's quite obvious. I've seen this a lot in Grayson Highlands up in Mount Rogers, but they love berries. That's about the only time I'm up there is in the spring. But boy, do they pound the berries, and they're everywhere. If you're ever up there, you can walk waist high in all the berries, and they're roaming, they're everywhere. And there have been some cases where they've had some bear problems up around the Thomas Knob shelter up there, if you ever get up there. But bears are present, and that's what it looks like. Now, one thing I want to last give you here is this one chart. This is pretty much a good summary of what we just talked about, and I hope you find it useful with the deer, the fox, the raccoon, and the rabbit. Now, this is one of my favorite slides and areas I want to discuss. What I learned from some wildlife biologists is the forest field edges. If you have the opportunity when you're hiking with the scouts, go find the edge. These are areas that are transition zones, so to speak, where you've got an open area where animals can come out in and forage and whatever, and then they gradually go into transition areas like where there's brush and weeds. If you notice in the photograph, and then they return to the forest for their main shelter. So these are in many ways social gathering areas for a variety of animals. A mouse will come out there and forage and eat whatever he can. There'll be birds and any type of other animals. This is just where a lot of areas where a lot of animals go. You have a big diversity of plants that are out there, so that just makes for a great mix of possible animals that are out, visiting into the field and along the field edges. This is one of the common practices done in forestry, is to create group openings like this to provide areas for wildlife. Now, like I said, it's a gathering area for food, fun, and death. I like to tell scouts, and this is just kind of a story like I mentioned a lot when I'm at Philmont talking with the scouts about the edge effect, but the open area out there where all that grass and sunlight is, that's a salad bowl for deer. A lot of them just come out there and socialize and eat because that's where they get, and then they return back into the woods and sleep and cover, during the day and later in the evening. But it's a lot of places where I always kid with them, they come out and they get their first date. Other things you may see along the edge of the field are feathers, bones, and animal parts. There'll be birds, vultures can hang around, falcons, hawks. They're just perched there waiting to see an animal and that they'll pounce on. And you'll see feathers along there, and that's a great discussion. This is what happened. That was where a predator, ruined the whole day of a particular bird and had a feast. So you'll see a lot of those along the field edges, and if you get an opportunity, that's where you can really take some scouts and see a lot of diversity. This is my cheat sheet. I suggest you take this with you, and when you go into the woods, it'll give you a reminder of what to look for, and personally what really counts for the scouts. When they have a list, someone as a scribe, you can go around and look at these things. Like you see fur, you can talk about what's the fur from. Holes in trees, nest. You see bird droppings. You hear insects buzzing. Birds and mounds where something has been digging. You look at a plant that looks like it's been chewed. A lot of different animals forage and eat leaves as they go through the woods, and you can see where they've been chewing on them. But this is a great thing to use, and what you can listen for and have a discussion about. But this is a good reminder of what to be looking for when you're out, looking for signs of wildlife. Here's a good one, and boy, I bet you deer hunters know this one. You see a deer rub. Here's a good picture showing what they do. Honestly, I don't deer hunt, but I've seen a lot of these even around our campsites or near open fields, but they're kind of leaving their mark, and it's all part of, the things the deers do. Here's another favorite of mine, snags. It is definitely the Hilton Hotel for animal signs. I got this from a wildlife biologist, and look, you can discuss where birds perch. You'll see hollow cavities. You probably may even see some acorns in the bottom of a cavity. Somebody living in the tree. Who's in it? With the bark slabs, you may see different insects, whatever. But that is a Hilton for a variety of different things that you can discuss about with signs of wildlife. Here's a picture of an actual snag, and it is the Economy Lodge, breakfast included, for different wildlife, and great place for signs of wildlife. So if you get a chance, go look for these and have a discussion about it. Next, we got brush piles, and these actually, whenever I've done forestry practices, the wildlife biologist encourages you to leave some, brush, because it's a great cover and habitat for different rodents and other animals, especially in the winter, for a lot of them to keep warm. But be cautious in the summer when you got a lot of down trees and things like that. You could come across some snakes, but these are another areas where you'll see good signs of wildlife and cover where a lot of animals go for shelter. Here's another good area you need to go to is go find the water. Go walk along a pond or a lake. Next to those open fields in the forest edge I discussed earlier, this is another great place to go. Animals need water. You're going to see all kind of signs of it. You're going to discuss, maybe about the snags that you see laying in the water for fish habitat. Fishermen love it. You'll see the foxtail and all the other different plants that where different things come to the edge to get water. You're going to see signs of wildlife from the tracks. So great place to go. Go to the water. Look for signs all along the water. Talk about the fish. You see any mussels that are in the water, like the little seashells. That's a good sign of fresh water. A lot of different things like the minnows, the tadpoles. Look for them. Get the scouts to look and observe everything in this area, and they can write it down and count it as finding signs of wildlife. Here are the ones I most commonly see around water and just look, you should be able to find tadpoles, some frogs. You see the footprints of raccoon is real common. They get thirsty. You see deer. Deer are down there all the time, and that's the most common I've always seen around water. So look for it and have the scouts note it. Here's a good chart that you ought to take with you and have handy, but it pretty much covers a bunch of the most common ones around here. Not necessarily bear, but take a look at this and use it, and take it with you if you can, but it's a good example of some common tracks that you should be looking for. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about birds and where they reside in a forest canopy. This is good to know when you're out with the scouts, but there are different layers in the woods or in the forest canopy where different birds reside. So you can take a look. There's birds that are ground related, the sparrows and the waterfowls and shorebirds, all those. Some of them, they don't ever go very high. And in the understory, and I've seen around the neighborhood, mockingbirds and wrens, you always see them from like 0 to maybe 20 feet, 30 feet up, but then different birds reside higher up in the mid-story. Cardinals and the jays, and then a lot of times even way up high. I've always liked the scarlet tanager, and everybody says, "Oh, is that a cardinal?" It's a reddish, all red bird, but it's not a cardinal. But it's usually up high. It's not down low like the regular cardinal is. Cardinals are. But be looking for that. This is a great chart to give you an idea of the different habitats at different layers in the forest, and you can be looking for them and have a discussion about it, because it's all about habitat and where different birds and animals reside in the forest canopy. Well, so you can't go on a hike, and this happens a lot among different troops. You don't get to camp and go out as much, and you're trying to work on requirements. But it says, in the requirements, scouts may show evidence and tracks of signs of wildlife with a photograph. Getting more common. Everybody's got their phone. But anyway, it's not my preferred way, but if you're going to do it, have them take different pictures, multiple pictures of different things, and sit down and have a talk with them. Discuss each image with them on what, where, and role and function it plays in nature. The whole purpose of this is to get them more connected with nature and the ecosystems and have a better appreciation of how it all works together and how they're a part of it. So if you do that, have them take several pictures and then have a discussion about it to make sure they have a really good understanding about what goes on in nature. That's the purpose of it. Here are the resources that are currently available, and that's the current Scout BSA book, but use the handbook. Make sure the Scouts read it. Scoutmasters read it. It is really good the way it describes the requirement, and you can review it before you go. That way you can cover everything better. One other thing, if those watching this are in the Raleigh-Durham area, near us, near Jordan Lake, is the North Carolina Forest Service demonstration forest. Great place to go. A lot of scout troops go there. They've got a talking tree trail. They've got examples of forest practices. But it's a great place to go to bring the scouts for an outing, maybe just for the day. The other part here about the phone apps. Yes, they're coming out. You can pretty much do everything with your phone now, but here are a few of them. For birds, there's the Merlin Bird ID. Pretty neat. You can play a sound and the bird will come to it. That may be cheating, but it's interesting the way Merlin works, and you can record it and it'll tell you what the bird is. iTrack for Wildlife Light. It's free. It's limited. they'll encourage you to probably buy an upgraded version, but something to look at. There's another one called iNaturalist. It's kind of a social network of naturalists in a collaborative effort. So you'll find something, you'll post it, and it'll tell you what's in the area or a sighting most recent. But it requires setting up an account and all that, and it may not be permitted by different parents and so. But that's a few of the apps. They're coming out and they're really good, but it's best to go out and actually observe things with your eyes and stuff. But that's it for now about the resources. So make sure you use the book. Thank you, and that's it. I hope you found this information useful and not too boring. I'm Paul Dean, and I appreciate your attention to this. I have this information on the YouTube channel, and you can see it listed there. It's youtube.com at T209 Scout Leader. I'll be putting more information as it becomes available on that channel. But thank you for your time, and have a great day.